A million years ago, the Earth was a very different place. The landscapes we see today, the cities, the technology, the comfort, none of these existed. Instead, endless forests, vast grasslands, dangerous mountains, and untamed rivers covered the planet. In this raw and unforgiving world, early humans struggled to survive every single day. Their lives were not about luxury or dreams. Their only goal was survival. And every sunrise brought new challenges, new dangers, new struggles. When the morning sun rose, early humans awakened not in houses, but in caves under trees or in temporary shelters made from branches and leaves. There were no farms to provide food, no animals tamed for milk or meat, no permanent sources of security. The only way to live was to rely on nature, to take risks, to explore, and to fight for every bite of food. Men and women set out into the wilderness. Some searched for edible roots, fruits, and nuts hidden beneath the trees. Others prepared sharp stones and wooden spears hoping to hunt small animals. The hunt itself was not easy. Early humans had no bows, no arrows, no advanced weapons. They relied on sharp rocks tied to sticks, or sometimes just their hands, their speed, and their courage. Hunting meant danger, because the animals were often faster, stronger, and far more deadly. At any moment, a hunter could become the hunted. Imagine the fear of walking through tall grass, hearing the sudden growl of a lion behind you, or the sound of branches breaking as a massive predator stalks from the shadows. This was the daily reality for early humans. Every step into the wilderness was a gamble between life and death. Gathering food from plants was not always safe either. Some fruits were poisonous, some roots were deadly. Eating the wrong plant could mean illness or even death. Knowledge was survival, and that knowledge was passed down slowly, generation to generation, from elders to the young. To survive, humans had to remember which berries were safe, of which animals could be hunted, and which rivers provided clean water. Water was another daily struggle. There were no wells, no taps, no easy access. Early humans walked long distances to find streams, rivers, or lakes, and even then they had to be careful. Predators often waited near water sources because they knew all creatures, big and small, must come to drink. Approaching water was always a risk, a moment filled with tension, because danger could be lurking nearby. Fire was the greatest discovery of that time, the most powerful weapon and the most valuable tool. But in the beginning, fire was rare, often found only when lightning struck a tree or when volcanic eruptions spread flames across the land. For early humans, capturing fire was a miracle. They carried burning branches carefully, trying to keep the flames alive. Because once it died out, creating fire again was almost impossible. Fire gave warmth in freezing nights. It protected against wild animals, and it allowed humans to cook food, making it safer and easier to eat. Without fire, survival was even harder, and every spark of flame was like a treasure. Nights were the hardest part of their lives. Darkness was filled with the sounds of predators, the roars of lions, the howls of wolves, and the unknown movements of creatures in the shadows. Without fire, early humans huddled together, hoping to remain unseen, hiding in caves or among rocks. Fear was constant and sleep was never deep. They lived every night with the possibility that danger could strike at any moment. Yet despite all these hardships, humans adapted. Their minds were sharp, their eyes observant, and their instincts powerful. Slowly, they learned to create tools from stone, to sharpen wood into weapons, to use teamwork in hunting, and to protect one another. The struggle for food, water, and safety was relentless. But it also made them stronger, wiser, and more united. Life a million years ago was not a story of comfort. It was a story of courage. Every single day was a fight against hunger, thirst, predators, and nature itself. And this struggle, this endless battle for survival, was the foundation of what humanity would one day become. As time passed, early humans began to understand more about the world around them. They were no longer just wandering blindly through forests and grasslands. They were learning, adapting, and remembering. The first great change was the discovery of better tools. Sharp stones were shaped carefully, broken in ways that created edges like knives. These tools could cut meat, scrape animal hides, and dig roots from the ground. With every new tool, survival became a little easier. A sharpened stone meant cleaner cuts. A heavy rock tied to wood became a hammer. And soon humans realized that stone itself could be shaped into powerful weapons. But even with tools, survival was never simple. The world was still full of danger. The forests hid predators, the rivers carried floods, and the weather itself could kill. Cold winds swept across open lands, rainstorms flooded rivers, lightning struck trees and set entire forests on fire. In this world, nature was both an enemy and a teacher. Humans began to watch the animals more closely. They learned how predators hunted. They noticed how birds signaled danger, how the movement of the wind could hide their scent, and how herds of animals followed paths that led to water. By watching nature, they learned how to survive. Hunting became more organized. No longer did one man chase an animal alone. Instead, the small groups formed. Some chased while others waited in ambush. Together, they could bring down larger prey, but every hunt carried a price. A misstep, a slip, and a hunter could be injured or killed. The wounded often had no medicine. A broken bone meant weeks of suffering. A simple infection could take a life. And yet they continued. Because without hunting, there was no meat. Without meat, there was no strength. And without strength, the survival was impossible. Meat was more than just food. It gave energy, warmth, and life. The bones were used for tools. The hides were used for clothing and shelter. Nothing was wasted. Still, there were times when the hunt failed. When the animals escaped, when the forest was silent, when the rivers were empty. On those days, hunger grew stronger. Stomachs ached. Children cried. And entire groups were forced to move, searching for new lands, new hope. Movement was constant. There were no permanent villages, no towns, no cities. Every group wandered, following the animals, following the seasons. They built temporary shelters and abandoned them when food ran out. This nomadic life was harsh, but it was the only way to survive. In their endless search for food, early humans began to explore further. They crossed rivers. They climbed hills. They traveled through valleys and deserts. Every new land was a chance for water, a chance for fruit, a chance for survival. And with every journey, humans grew wiser. They remembered safe paths. They avoided dangerous territories. They marked caves, rivers, and hunting grounds. This knowledge became the map of their world. A map written not on paper, but in memory. A map passed down through stories, through warnings, through lessons told beside the fire at night. Because at night, when the flames burned, humans spoke. They shared the events of the day. They told the young how to hunt. They warned them of poisonous plants and dangerous animals. They shared victories and mourned losses. And in these simple words, around the glow of fire, something powerful began. The beginning of human culture, not just survival, not just instinct, but the first spark of wisdom, stories, and learning. It was in these nights, under the stars, that the foundation of human knowledge was born. As generations passed, early humans continued their struggle. But slowly their skills improved. Their minds grew sharper, their hands more skilled, and their eyes more observant. The stone tools of the past became sharper. New methods of shaping stone were discovered. Flint was struck, creating blades that could cut deeper and last longer. With better tools came better hunting. Now, groups could take down larger animals, deer, wild boar, and sometimes even massive beasts like bison or mammoth. These hunts were dangerous. A charging animal could crush a hunter in seconds. One mistake could bring disaster to the entire group, but the reward was worth the risk. A single large kill meant food for many days, meat for the stomachs, hides for warmth, bones for tools, and fat for fire. This success gave humans new confidence. They were no longer only prey to the predators. They were becoming hunters, fierce and determined. Yet even with success, life remained fragile. The weather was harsh. Storms destroyed shelters. Floods carried away supplies. Droughts left rivers dry and animals vanished from the land. When nature turned against them, humans were forced to move again. Step by step, they wandered into new territories. Each journey carried fear, but also hope. Some groups climbed high mountains. Others crossed wide rivers. Some entered deep forests filled with shadows and unknown dangers. Every new land was a mystery. Would there be water? Would there be fruit? Would there be safety? Or would there only be hunger and death? These endless journeys spread humans far and wide. Slowly, they began to adapt to different climates. In cold lands, they learned to wrap hides tightly around their bodies. In hot lands, they searched for shady and water holes. Adaptation became their greatest weapon. Not claws, not fangs, not strength, but the mind. The ability to learn, to change, to survive anywhere. At night, the fire still burned. Its light pushed back the darkness. Its warmth gave comfort in the cold. And its crackling sound was a promise of safety. Around the fire, humans shared more than stories. They shared knowledge. Which paths led to rivers? Which animals were easiest to hunt? Which plants could heal wounds? And which could kill? This sharing of knowledge bound the group together. It was not just survival of the body. It was survival of the mind. The young listened carefully. Every word was important. Every lesson could mean the difference between life and death. And so, knowledge became the invisible thread that connected generations. The past guided the present. The present prepared the future. But even with growing wisdom, danger was never far away. Predators still prowled in the dark. Accidents still took lives. And hunger still returned again and again. Yet humans did not give up. They endured, they fought. They survived. Part by part, step by step, struggle by struggle, they were becoming something greater, something stronger, something that would one day shape the entire world. As more seasons passed, life continued to test early humans. Every day brought a new challenge. But with each challenge they learned, they adapted, and they grew stronger. One of the greatest lessons came from watching fire more closely. At first, fire was captured from nature, from lightning, from volcanoes, from burning forests. But slowly humans began to experiment. They struck stones together, searching for sparks. They rubbed sticks with endless patience until heat turned into flame. The day they created fire on their own, everything changed forever. Now fire was no longer just a gift of nature. It was a tool, a weapon, a light in the darkness, and a shield against fear. With fire, nights grew safer. The eyes of predators glowed in the distance, but they did not come close. The warmth of flames pushed away the cold. The smoke kept insects away. And for the first time, humans felt a sense of control. Cooking food became easier. Raw meat, tough and hard to chew, was transformed by fire. It became softer, safer, and far more nourishing. This simple act changed the human body. Cooked food gave more energy. It allowed the brain to grow. It fueled the mind, the imagination, the ability to think further than survival. Around the fire, new bonds were formed. Families gathered together, groups grew closer, and conversations lasted longer into the night. But survival was still a constant struggle. The world was not gentle. Rivers still flooded. Storms still destroyed shelters, and winters brought death to the weak. To survive these hardships, humans began to cooperate more. They worked together to build stronger shelters. They watched over one another during hunts. They shared food when times were hard. This cooperation, this unity was powerful. It turned small groups into tribes. It turned individuals into communities, and it made survival more certain. The hunt also changed. With fire and better tools, humans dared to chase larger prey. Mammoths, giant elk, wild cattle. The strategy was dangerous, but teamwork made it possible. Some hunters lit fires to drive animals into traps. Others waited with spears. Together they faced beasts much larger than themselves. And when they succeeded, the reward was enormous. Meat for weeks, hides for clothing and shelter, bones for weapons and tools. Victories like these gave humans confidence. They were no longer only surviving, they were beginning to dominate. But domination had a cost. With every large animal killed, the balance of nature shifted. Herds became smaller. Prey grew harder to find, and humans were forced to travel farther, always searching for the next hunt. Migration became a way of life, across valleys, over mountains, through rivers and plains. Step by step, humans spread across the world. Each new land brought new lessons. Cold lands demanded warmer clothing. Dry lands demanded knowledge of water. Dense forests demanded sharper eyes and greater caution. No matter where they went, humans learned to adapt. And in that adaptation, they discovered their greatest strength: not claws, not fangs, not raw power, but intelligence, creativity, and the ability to change. The journey of survival was shaping something far greater. It was shaping the destiny of humankind. As humans spread further across the earth, their journeys took them into unfamiliar lands. Cold winds swept across frozen plains. Scorching suns burned over deserts, and thick jungles swallowed the light of day. In each new place, survival meant new skills. In the freezing north, fire and furs became shields against death. In hot, dry deserts, every drop of water was a treasure. In dense forests, danger could leap from the shadows at any moment. Adaptation was no longer a choice. It was a rule. And those who could not adapt did not survive. The challenges of new environments pushed humans to think differently. They learned to store food, to prepare for the days when hunting failed. They discovered caves that held safety through storms. They built stronger shelters, not just for a night, but for seasons. Slowly, the concept of home began to take root. Not yet villages, not yet towns, but places familiar and safe where groups returned again and again. With stability came growth. The groups became larger, the bonds became stronger, and leadership began to emerge. The strongest hunters, the wisest elders, those with knowledge of land and fire, became guides for the rest. Decisions were no longer made by chance. They were shaped by experience, and the group followed those they trusted most. This was the earliest form of human society. But society brought new challenges. More people meant more mouths to feed. More hunters meant fewer animals left behind. And sometimes arguments turned into conflict. Resources were limited. A patch of fruit trees, a water source, a hunting ground. These could spark tension between groups. Some tribes avoided one another, others fought. And in these clashes, humans faced humans as enemies, not just predators of the wild. The struggle for survival was no longer only against nature. It was also against one another. Yet even in conflict, new lessons were learned. The need for strategy, the importance of unity, the value of planning before action. These lessons sharpened the mind further. They turned survival into something more than instinct. They turned it into thought, preparation, and vision. Still, the earth was not gentle. Ice ages swept across the land. Winters that lasted years tested every living creature. Animals migrated, rivers froze, and food became scarce. For human survival during these ages was a true test. Fire and fur became lifelines. Shelters grew deeper, hidden in caves. Every meal was precious, every spark of flame sacred. Many did not survive. But those who endured carried the strength of generations within them. They had faced hunger, cold, predators, and even each other. And through it all, they kept moving forward. Step by step, struggle by struggle, they were preparing for the next great leap. A leap that would one day separate them forever from the world of wild beasts. Because soon humans would not only survive nature, they would begin to shape it. The struggle for survival had shaped early humans for countless generations. They had learned to hunt, to gather, to travel through harsh lands. They had mastered fire, created tools, and formed tribes. But now a new chapter was beginning. A chapter where humans would no longer only live by the rules of nature. They would begin to bend those rules. It started with observation. Humans noticed the cycles of animals, the way herds followed the seasons, the way birds migrated when the weather changed. They noticed the patterns of plants, seeds falling to the ground, new shoots rising with the rains, fruits ripening, and then vanishing until the next season. These small observations grew into powerful knowledge. For the first time, humans began to plant seeds deliberately. At first, it was simple, perhaps a handful of seeds scattered near a camp. But when those seeds grew into food, a spark of realization appeared. The land itself could be shaped. Nature could be guided, and food could be made more certain. This was the beginning of agriculture, the first steps away from endless wandering, the first steps towards staying in one place. With plants came animals. Instead of chasing herds endlessly, humans began to capture and keep them. Goats, sheep, dogs. Some provided meat, some gave milk, and some became partners in survival. The dog, once a predator of humans, now became their ally, a guardian in the night, a companion in the hunt, and a bond that has lasted to this very day. With farming and herding, the rhythm of life began to change. For the first time, food could be stored, grain dried and kept for months, meat preserved with fire and smoke. The fear of constant hunger began to fade, and with stability came growth. Tribes became larger, shelters became permanent, and settlements began to rise. But this change was not without cost. Where once humans had roamed free, now they were tied to the land. Where once nature provided balance, now humans demanded more. More crops, more animals, more land. The struggle for survival had shifted. It was no longer only against predators or storms. It was against scarcity itself, and against one another for control of land and food. Conflict grew stronger. Tribe against tribe, settlement against settlement. The fight for survival had become the fight for resources. Yet even through conflict, humanity advanced. The mind that once created simple stone tools now built stronger shelters. The hands that once struck sparks for fire now carved wood for wheels. And the imagination that once feared the dark now dreamed of shaping the future. This was no longer the story of survival alone. It was the story of